Today on Faces of Florence, Dean Lisenby. Dean is a true face of Florence. He's been active in a variety of ways here in the Florence community, and today he'll share with us his most important story.
Hey, welcome. We're so glad you found us. Radio Free is a 24-hour Christian mixed radio station broadcasting right here out of Florence, South Carolina. So when you're driving around town, remember to tune it in to 92.5. And if you're outside of the Florence area, you can listen 24 hours a day at radiofree.cc.
Dean Lisenby, welcome to Radio Free and welcome to Faces of Florence. Now, you've been watching some of these, but Faces of Florence, the kind of idea is just to get to know some of our neighbors here in Florence. Yep. We're called to love our neighbor. Can't love them good unless you know them.
That's right.
So, and just for the sake of our audience, this has been a long time coming.
We have. We've exchanged some text messages for sure.
But that's good. Yeah. I'm glad it's all in God's timing, right?
That's right.
And so I'm glad you're here. And honestly, I'm glad that I had a chance to hear this story before you came here, because I don't know if I would have been prepared, honestly. It's a powerful, powerful story. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Mm-hmm. But let's start, as we usually do, is just a little bit of information about you. Where were you born and raised? And tell us a little bit about what you do out there at ACS.
Sure. Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed watching the series so far, so it's an honor to sit here as part of that series, so I appreciate it. I was born and raised in Patrick, South Carolina. Most people don't know where Patrick's at, but they can at least get a picture. Chesterfield County, so South Carolina. It's about 15 miles north of Hartsville. I grew up on a pretty large piece of land my grandfather owned. He farmed some. He was getting up in age, and so wasn't farming as much when I was a youngster. But I do remember all that stuff and learned to work hard and try to do what you need to do, but play hard at the same time. So my front yard, backyard was the football field and the basketball court and all that good stuff. So
really into sports growing up?
No, I was not a sports person at all. I was a band geek and loved music, loved the instruments and all that good stuff. So really sunk myself into that in high school. Drum major of our high school band, and
nice.
Just had a blast doing that stuff. But I enjoyed sports, enjoyed playing, but I wasn't the athletic type by any means. But grew up there, came to Florence to go to Francis Marion College at the time, not Francis Marion University, and just stuck. I stuck around. I made enough friends down here, and I knew going back home, as much as I loved that place, there was just not enough there for me to make a living in Patrick. So I loved the place, and I joke with my wife all the time and tell her I'd move back tomorrow, but I'd have to divorce her, and that's
off the table.
She's not going. Yeah. She's not going for sure. She's a city girl more so than a country girl. So, but yeah, came here and ended up working at ACS, and man, I've been there 29 years. It's really hard to believe. I actually started at ACS about 9 months after I graduated college. And so done a lot of different things over there, but at the end of the day, we serve churches. We provide software and solutions for churches all across the country and a few other countries as well. But my job is operations now. So I'm an IT guy by trade. I'm born and raised, it feels like, in the technology era. If you think back to the early 80s, the Commodore 64, I had one of those.
Did you?
Nice. So it's pretty cool. So I got to play with all that technology, but now manage a large group of that company over there that we serve the company. So our job, my team's job, is to keep the people productive and make sure they've got the tools they need, the computers, the phone systems, all that good stuff.
Nice.
So, but it's a great career for sure.
Well, I heard your name a lot before I met you. It seemed like you were very active, especially at ACS, of course, but all around town. Tell me a little bit about what you have invested your life in here. You sit on a few boards?
Yes,
well, correct?
I have in the past. So very active at my church, Ebenezer Baptist. I've been there since 2001 or so, right after we had my daughter. We joined that church. It was right around the corner, and it was I heard a lot of good things about it, and we've invested a lot of time there. I'm currently the treasurer of the church there. but Sunday school teacher, been around a lot of different committees and stuff like that. But really, probably what people would know me from is my time at the House of Hope. I spent almost 9 years, I think it was, 8 years on the board, and 4 or 5 as the chairman of the board there, and working with Brian Braddock. Was able to get him to come on board. He's been the lifeblood of that organization, obviously.
Absolutely.
But so really, Brian and I locked arms with, of course, a number of other volunteers that have really made an impact and served the homeless people of the area. That's truly been a rewarding thing to be a part of and to watch and see how that ministry has impacted Florence. But the other thing I really enjoy is just kids. I love investing in kids. So both my children went to the King's Academy for a good background of education and Christian belief. And I just sunk myself into the booster club there and wherever I could fill in. So I've been known to get on a microphone and do some PA work and call a basketball game or things like that. Just fun, having fun with these kids. It's just, I guess it keeps me a little bit young. I'm not as young as I used to be, but it'll definitely keep you on your toes over there. So that's really probably where people know me from, either church, House of Hope, King's Academy, or certainly work, for sure.
Well, you have had a couple of years that have just been hard to even put to words. But I saw you do it, and you did a fantastic job, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
But I would like for you to share a little bit of that with us now. You have, like you said, you're married. You have a daughter, Brianna. You have a son, Tripp.
That's correct.
And a couple of years ago now, something went down.
Yeah.
And your love for kids, especially your own, came to the front.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
So, back in December of 2019, first of all, life was good. If you really kind of took stock of where we were, where I was at in life, work was good, life was good, children were healthy. Neither one of my kids had even had fevers really growing up. We just didn't have issues with health at all. So things were great. And then my daughter got in a car accident on the interstate. The other vehicle rolled and went down an embankment. Nobody got hurt, thankfully. But that was sort of the precursor. It was like that was the warning shot, if you will. And then 3 weeks later, my son started having some issues. He actually passed out on me on the floor on Christmas morning. And we just assumed, he's 15 years old at the time. He's growing. I think he had grown 6 or 7 inches that summer. Yeah. So he'd really shot up. And so we thought, well, maybe he just doesn't understand this new body he's got, right?
Balance is off.
Yeah, kids are kids, and you've seen a lot of different things around, people with knees that hurt when they grow a lot, whatever. So we sort of wrote it off. And then January 1st, 2020, he had a seizure. I'll get emotional talking about it, but the journey's been tough, but we thank God for where we sit today. So we'll get there, I'm sure. But anyway, January 1st had his first seizure, rushed him to the hospital, went to MUSC here in Florence, and within a matter of 2 hours, he had been diagnosed with a brain tumor, inoperable in Florence, but certainly Charleston or Columbia. So we chose MUSC Charleston. He was air flighted down there, and literally the first words the doctor in Charleston told me after they did a EVD, which is put a little hole in his head to make sure that all that pressure comes off the head, was he had probably about an hour or so to live. And man, that's just when you kind of sit up a little bit straighter and you go, what? Like this is it's a brain tumor, and yes, he's got to have an emergency procedure, but man, my kid was just an hour or two, maybe 5, from death. And that's when things got really real, really fast. And I guess to sort of speed the story a little bit, the community just surrounded me, and man, my wife and I just locked arms together and said, we're going to do this together, and we're going to ask the community to come along beside of us. We're going to shout our praise and glory to our Lord and Savior, whatever the outcome, and the Mercy Me song, the song basically says, whatever the outcome, I know you can take away the pain with your word, but if you don't, I'm still going to honor you. I'm still going to worship you. I'm still going to love you. And that's what we said we were going to do. And that's been really hard, because there's been multiple times through this process where, it's been tough. I didn't want to praise. I didn't want to worship. I didn't want to, but we just kept leaning in. And at one point, Kevin, we had 9,000 people praying for my family in a Facebook group. We had 20-something countries represented, 40-something states represented.
Let's talk about that for a minute. That's an interesting part of the story because you created this Facebook group and it exploded. And I've heard from several other people that you really kept it real inside that Facebook group. And that's refreshing, man.
Yeah, it was, it was one of these times where, social media is just fraught with issues. Yeah. And one of the big issues with social media I have with it anyway is that people only put their best out there.
Right.
They want you to see what's going great in their life. And therefore you get this false sense of who a person may be.
Sure.
And I just didn't want that to happen. I needed people to know that we were hurting. There was a lot of pain involved. There was a lot of uncertainty. We didn't know what the future held. We finally had to accept the fact that we needed to go somewhere else for treatment. And St. Jude, fortunately, accepted us into their program, which means we got to lift our family and move to Memphis, Tennessee for 8 months. And it was basically, walk away from life. So church, work, school, all these things that we were investing our time and energy is just boom, it was over because nothing mattered as much as taking care of my kid.
Right.
And he needed to see that was real to us. That was not just words, and that's what we did. But the Facebook group really exploded, and we just tried to keep. We just tried to keep people informed. For a little while, I struggled with, am I just a freak show kind of thing? People, is it just reality
Ambulance
TV?
chasers, right,
kind of thing. But, I began to realize that people were really being blessed by when things did happen that you could truly see God's hand in because we were seeing it, we were living it, and we were being surrounded by the best technology, the best doctors, the best of this, the best of that. But even in their best, we saw things that were just not good.
Yeah.
Just recently had a friend who, friend of a friend, who passed away from the same tumor that my kid did. He lived 40-something years after the tumor and passed away from that. He had lifelong issues. And if I jump to the end of the story for a minute, my kid's not dealing with that. My kid's walking and talking and driving and going to school. He's in college. He's playing kickball. He's running around in the backyard with his friends. I mean, he's swimming. He's doing life.
Yeah.
And just a few short months earlier, we weren't sure if he'd ever walk again. The doctor said when we do this surgery, many of the kids can't talk for months, if ever, again. And, you just faced with so much certainty. But we just said, we're going to lean in, we're going to love God, and we're going to tell everybody. And that's what we try to do, man. We're trying to tell everybody what God's done for our family. So.
Well, you did, and you did a great job of keeping the greater group there informed, and it spread, like you said, worldwide. Correct?
Yeah, it was. I don't know all the countries. We had them at one point trying to keep up with them, but it was over 20-something countries at some point.
That's fascinating, man. Well, as we all know, right around that time, COVID becomes a thing. And talk about a punch in the face after what you're already dealing with. Tell me how that looked for you guys and what the challenge was with that.
Yeah, so, first of all, it's you get snatched up out of your life. So, again, you walk away from work, school, church, all those things, and you get sent off to a foreign city where you really know. I knew two people who lived in the Memphis area, and they were wonderful friends while we were there. But then COVID hits, and it's basically everybody goes home. And so all the friends and family who were going to come see us, all of a sudden, well, we already got an immune-compromised kid.
Right.
And in a pandemic where you really don't need to be around anybody. So we got isolated even more. So now we're isolated. It's just the three of us. So this is where I'm a technology lover, right? So at the end of the day, what COVID did that was a good thing for us is it taught the world how to be FaceTimers. It taught the world how to use Zoom or Google Meets or whatever it is that you use. And we were able to start meeting with our friends and family. Of course, my daughter was back in Florence, and we were FaceTiming her easy enough. But the rest of our family and friends were just not there but it didn't take long for them to start coming. So COVID, in a way, was a good thing, and I sure do shudder to even say that, because that's
Right.
that's not true. But for us in that case, it was a good thing. But the technology helped us stay together. But it was foreign city, hardly knew anybody, going through a life and death situation. COVID actually separated my wife and I. So when all that happened, they would only allow the patient, my son, and a caregiver into the hospital. And if you checked in for a week of chemo, whoever checked in with the kid had to stay. So you couldn't swap out, you couldn't change. So I'm basically dropping my wife and son off at the hospital and going back to a town. I might as well have been an ocean away, And so it really gave a lot of opportunity for Satan to come into our relationship and make sure, he needled any way he could. And we just had to stay lockstep with each other. Like, we're not going to let these things happen. And we did a great job. I got to tell you, my wife and I really have locked arms on this, and we've been able to hold it together. It's been hard, brother.
Yeah.
It's been hard.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
So.
Well, all right. So let's move down the road a year or so. Tell me when the tide started to change, because like you said, it got very difficult.
Yeah.
But modern medicine.
Yeah, modern medicine, and a kid who's a warrior. So, man, if I could just brag on him for just a second, because I watched him start down this process, and I remember him coming out of surgery, and I said, "What can I do for you?" He said, "Nothing. I just want to be normal again." And so I remember thinking, all right, I'd switch places with this guy if I could, but I can't. And I said that to him. I said, "Dude, this is your journey. Your mom and dad and your sister and everybody's going to be right beside you. We got thousands of people supporting you. This is your journey. You got to walk it. You got to." And so he began to really rise up. If a doctor asked him to do something, he did it. If the doc said, "Get outside and walk around the block," he walked around the block. I don't care how bad he was feeling, he did it. He was a warrior. And when I started to see that in him, I really believed that our belief that God was going to heal my kid, and the fact that my kid was willing to put in the work, that we were getting ready to see something really magical happen. So even in the depths of it all, on the if you ever have known anybody go through chemo, there's always this bottom. So when you get all your treatment, and then 3 or 4 weeks later, everything just bottoms out, and all your immune system, maybe 10 days, depending on which type of treatment it is. And it's just the worst. Those 3 or 4 days are just the worst. And even in those times, my son would work out. He would get up and go work out. And so you begin to just have hope in the process, the modern medicine, the fact that we were at St. Jude, the world's best pediatric cancer institute, period. People from all over the world flocked there. And then when we came home, watching him stand on the sidelines with his football team was pretty awesome. Pretty awesome.
Now, you're his dad, obviously. You are biased in some ways,
Sure.
but there's something special about Tripp, obviously. Where do you think that warrior spirit comes from?
Well, he's always been a stubborn kid.
Yeah,
So
sometimes that comes in handy, right?
If I just put my dad hat on for a second, he makes up his mind, and he does it. And I think that's just personality. Just to be candid, I think if I were the one dealing with that, it may not have been the same way. I like to waller around in my pity a little bit. He never did that. He never did that. It's who he is. It's how God created him. And, while none of us would ever choose this journey, I think Tripp, one day, he's not ready to say it by any means today, but God created him in a way that he would be okay. He was going to make it through that journey, or he was going to certainly kill himself trying to come through it. Right. And I don't mean that figuratively. I mean, there were times.
He
was all in. He wanted to be normal. And I think it just comes from who he is, how he was created. I really do.
So after some of this treatments up and down, you started making some progress. Yeah. Walk us through a little bit of that, because you told me before, or I heard you say before, that him walking was possibly off the table. Yeah, early on. So this particular type of surgery and the particular type of tumor he has is on the brainstem. So what happens is, as the tumor is growing, the brainstem is contracting, and the brain can
overcome that as long as it's taking its time. But when they go in there and take this tumor out, the brainstem relaxes instantly. And when that happens, a lot of kids can't see, a lot of kids can't swallow, a lot of kids can't hear, many can't talk, and they lose all sense of balance. He couldn't walk. He basically had to relearn how to walk, run. He could still stand up. I mean, he still had full control of his muscles and everything else. But basically, when we got to St. Jude, he saw other kids in the same boat as he was, having to be pushed around by their parents in a wheelchair. And my kid doesn't like for anybody to help him. So that was another driver, you know, like when I was trying to help him stand up, you know, he didn't want my help. I got this, Dad. And, you know, and he did, but he still needed some help. But watching other kids, particularly one of our friends, Zane was just a few weeks ahead of Tripp, and Zane was in a wheelchair, and then he was in a walker or using a walker. And then Tripp said, well, I can do that. So he started using a walker. Zane used a cane for a little while. Tripp used a cane for a little while. Then he started walking on his own. So it was kind of following along, being inspired by some of the other kids that we saw in the process too. But yeah, he was able to start walking again, and ultimately began to run in the backyard. He had to teach himself to run again. And then he locked in with Perfection Therapy, Paul John and David Barnes and those guys over there. And we did therapy with those guys, I think it was 3 days a week for months. And they pushed him. They worked him hard.
Those are good guys.
They are great guys. And Marie is one of the other ladies over there. And Marie and Tripp had this little love-hate relationship going on. So she'd push him really hard, and he'd work hard for her, but he didn't want to talk to Marie. He wanted to talk to Paul or David. And but they worked it all out. And really, through Tripp's drive, his spirit, and watching Paul and David and Marie do their thing, you know, Tripp was able to play basketball in December of the same year that he missed his football season. So that's really kind of the downer of it. But he went on to play soccer in the spring of 2021. Yeah, 2021. Right.
So he played basketball in 2020.
Yes.
The same
Yeah.
year that he had a seizure.
Yeah. Kid couldn't feed himself in January, and ran up and down the court and played basketball in December.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just the drive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
well, God's good, man. I mean, I'll tell you, we give God all the credit for healing my boy, for healing my kid and keeping my family intact. It's very humbling.
Yeah.
Very, very humbling, because it's not the outcome for everybody.
Right. And talk about that for a second, because I heard you say this when at your talk, but if the outcome had been different, how do you think you would be different?
You know, I struggle to answer that question. I really do. I will tell you that even today, I have a little bit of guilt on the fact that my kid's doing so well, and Zane, that I just mentioned, didn't make it. Wow. You know, 86% of the kids who have this particular type of brain tumor don't make it. 86. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. 86% survive, which means 14%, you know, don't.
Yeah.
And Zane was one of those. So the kid who inspired Tripp to get back up and move didn't make it. And here's my kid playing basketball, you know, 11 months later. Now, he wasn't at the same competitive level that he was before the tumor, but he was out on the court. And his coach said he earned a spot, and so he went out and played and had a good time. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's being on the court that was a real win for me as his parent. So I felt guilty about it, but, you know, you have to really look around, and I have to. What I've done is taken the approach that the fact that he's able to do that should be used as an encouragement to others, not that I should feel guilty because others didn't.
That's good.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's really where the Facebook group, again, really helped me to see, like, this story can encourage and inspire people who are dealing with some of the same stuff. Maybe it's not medulloblastoma. Maybe it's just, you know, a divorce situation.
Yeah, right.
Maybe it's a child who's addicted to drugs, or an adult who's, you know, got a substance abuse problem, whatever. But we can use our story and the fact that God leaned into our family and helped us overcome it to inspire others. And that's what we're trying to do, man.
Hope's a powerful thing, isn't it?
Hope is an amazing thing. Yes.
Well, let's talk a little bit about St. Jude now, because one of your passions now is to give back. And I think that's just in your DNA. Yeah. But you've been impacted so highly by that particular organization. Tell me about what they did for you guys and how you're trying to give back.
Yeah. So, the key on St. Jude is whatever you think about St. Jude, you don't know the half of it. Let
really?
me just say that right up front is I'm so impressed with how they handle things. So, example, we knew we were going to be there for months, so we drove instead of flew, and we drove to Memphis. And when we got there, the first question they asked us was, "How'd you get here?" And I said, "We drove." They said, "What's your home address?" And of course, they already had that, I guess. But punched it in the computer. All right, here's $158 for mileage. They gave me my mileage back. I wasn't going to ask for mileage back. It's just those things. They gave us money every week for groceries. They let us eat in their cafeteria at no cost. I mean, it was just crazy, the stuff they do. St. Jude really takes away any other concern around money, finance. And so from there, just to see how they take care of you. They basically told us when we got there, we'll take care of your kid for the rest of his life. Wow. Like all things you can run through us and we'll take care of it. And the reason is they're a research hospital. At the end of the day, what they've learned from the previous generations, they're applying to my kid. So they want to learn everything they can from my kid to apply to the next kid.
Right.
But this stuff's expensive.
Sure.
And so really, several years ago, they changed one of their policies. And so they do now at least file if you have insurance.
Okay.
So
good.
I was able to get some insight into what it was actually costing because I could go look on my insurance portal.
Interesting.
And I began to see, that this is $75,000 and $33,000 and $112,000. And all of a sudden I started getting this cold sweat around the fact that these guys are going to spend $1 million plus easily on my kid. And I just really, again, overcome with, golly, man, for me, for my family, Lord, that's awesome. And God really impressed upon my heart. He said, do something about that. And I just really started trying to figure it out. The place we stayed while we were there, St. Jude's literally right on the Mississippi River. So I would spend a lot of time walking up and down the Mississippi and just God's creation and the birds and, all the things around. And what I took away from that was give back. Take every dollar that St. Jude has spent on your kid and give it back. And, of course, I'm thinking, I don't have that kind of money. ACS pays me well.
Right,
I've done well in life.
Right.
I've managed my money well, but $1 million plus. But let's see what happens.
Here we are.
Yes, here we are. So my wife and I committed to $5,000 a year for at least the first 5 years into a fund here at Eastern Carolina Community Foundation. So we created a fund, the Tripp Lisenby Brain Cancer Research Fund, where 100% of the interest off of any money donated to that fund will be given to St. Jude until 100% of Tripp's expenses are paid for.
Wow.
We sent our first $5,000 check about 2 weeks ago. So we're $5,000 into $1 million.
All right, here we go.
The fund is up to almost $65,000. So we've had some generous friends. We've had the March event, several other things that give you $100, $300, $500, whatever. Got a friend up in Chesterfield County. It gives $10 a month. So $10 a month, $5,000. It doesn't matter. Whatever works, put it in. We're going to leave it there, and the interest forever will go to pay St. Jude. And so our goal is not only to give back what St. Jude has given to us, but to give more.
That's fascinating. Yeah. When you first were talking about that, I thought, you just paying the chunk back is huge, but you set it up so that it will be a stream
forever.
That's incredible.
Forever. That's the goal. As long as I'm alive, I can guarantee that will be the case. After I'm dead and gone, the fund will handle itself. Eastern Carolina has set it up where they know that's the beneficiary of any interest. So,
well, let's talk about how people can give, and maybe just re-encourage people to give what they can, because like you said, it can be big, or just a little bit, a coffee a month.
Yeah, whatever works. And, the way to give is through Eastern Carolina. They have a website. You can call me, text me, message me on Facebook, whatever. I'll come get it. We really are trying our best to make sure we don't inconvenience folks in the process. But, yeah, so any way they want to give, we'll be glad to take it and put it to good use. That is the goal. That's the plan.
Well, we'll put all that information along with the video so people can find it easily.
Yes.
Well, let's end with a little update on Tripp himself.
Yep.
I got to see him at the March event, and he looks great.
He does.
But tell me about what his headspace now, and maybe what you're hoping for him in the next year or so.
Yeah, he's doing fantastic. You know, there was a time during that treatment and that journey where, as a father and son, you know, before it, we'd wrestle a little bit, and he was getting to a point where he could take me. And then we, you know, got into this journey where he didn't feel like playing anything, but he hit me the other day in the kitchen. He came up behind me pretty hard and hit me, and I thought, I think I got my kid back now, you know, because he took the wind out of me for a second. So he's doing really, really well. He's, like I said, Francis Marion. He's doing all the things that he wants to do as a kid. Still got a little bit of double vision up close. Now, far off, he's good. And a little bit of motor skill things. So if you think about part of the brainstem issue is, or think of it like a stroke victim where controlling, you know, it's not what he had, but it's a similar outcome. So you still got to work on some fine motor skills, a little bit of vision issues. But really, dude, other than that, he's doing great. And we are so thankful about this. I mean, it's overwhelming to stop and think about. Yeah, it really is.
Well, I appreciate you spending some time and telling a story. I know it's tough for you to keep repeating it, but I also know that you're passionate about continue to repeat it because hope is a powerful thing, like we said.
Yeah, let me say this too. You know, when you talk about giving back to the fund or whatever, I want to tell the story. So I literally would invite anybody to invite me to your small group, your men's ministry, your women's, whatever. You want to get together Tuesday morning for coffee. I'd love to tell the story with a small group of people just because I do think what God's done in our life, there's all these little things that we can talk about, you know, and really I've learned so much through this journey personally. Many people have shared scripture with me that means so much more to me now. And being able to tell those stories, if I got 10 minutes, I'll tell you a little story. If we got an hour, we'll sit and talk for a long time. You know, I love to talk, and my wife and kids tell me I talk too much, but I just want to tell the story, man. So anywhere, anytime, let's get it on a calendar. And if through that somebody wants to give $10 or $100 or commit to having a fundraiser event for Tripp, he's not quite ready to talk about it himself.
Okay,
if you were at the March
sure.
event, you know, he got on stage and he did talk for just a minute. But he's a 17-year-old. He probably doesn't fully appreciate at this point the big picture of what's happened, but I think he will.
Oh, yeah.
And I really believe God's going to do some really cool stuff through that kid. I just can't wait to see it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Dean Lisenby, I just want to say thank you so much for being the kind of guy that people can look up to, you know, and to really be a model for how to deal with difficult stuff. And we're going to continue to pray for you guys and for Tripp specifically. And like I said, we'll put all the information about the fund, and we're going to get St. Jude paid back.
Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great day. I really do believe it'll happen in my lifetime. So I'm really challenged by that because I don't organize fundraisers well. That's not what I do. I'm more of a back office kind of like organize that sort of stuff. But I think it'll happen. So looking forward. Keep the prayers up, man. I really do appreciate it.